Yeah.
This is Geek Therapy Radio.
What are we waiting for?
And now your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger.
Welcome into Geek Therapy Radio. I am your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger, and this is a packed show this week. Chris Hogan joins me all the way from New York City, and we talk about kind of what it was like to grow up biracial. Of course, we talk about geek stuff and tech stuff and how our hobbies kind of help us through the hard times. So make sure that you stick around for that. Chris Hogan is my guest. I call him Hollywood, even though he's from New York. He's living in New York City now. He's from Houston, but he's living in New York City now. Hollywood, Chris Hogan joins me a little later. It's a very fascinating discussion. Let's move on to the topic du jour of this first segment, because it's kind of a shorter first segment, and this is an interesting topic to talk about. You've heard it. It's a buzzword right now, if I can use that phrase. The buzzword of 5G. You've heard we're moving to 5G. We're at 4G LTE right now, our smartphones and everything like that. 5G is just this Jesus generation of cellular connectivity and mobile hotspots and Wi-Fi's and broadband and all that kind of stuff. It's just a buzzword in that arena. New phones are going to be compatible with 5G. Let's talk about the truth of 5G. What does it mean? What does it mean to you? What are we looking out for with 5G? First, the basics. This new 5G technology works on a different frequency that 4G works on. 4G works on up to about 5.9 gigahertz, 450 megahertz to 5.9 gigahertz. 5G works in 24 gigahertz all the way up to almost 100 gigahertz, about 90 gigahertz. So 24 gigahertz to roughly around 90 gigahertz. And that offers our first hurdle. The more tech savvy among us, simply mentioning 24 gigahertz to 90 gigahertz and 5G and how that's supposed to work for a mobile network and mobile broadband, the big red flag is that the higher you go up the frequency spectrum, the harder it is for those frequencies to penetrate anything. And in fact, the 60 gigahertz spectrum has a hard time penetrating oxygen. That means there's a whole lot of this frequency range from 24 gigahertz to up to around 100 gigahertz that won't be able to penetrate a sheet of paper or your hand or something thinner even maybe than paper. Like I said, oxygen. 60 gigahertz has a hard time penetrating oxygen. Imagine if it rains or if it's foggy. 24 to 90 gigahertz, that's going to have a hard time penetrating the rain or the fog even. So if you have a 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi router in your home, you know that yes, when you are near the router, it offers you much lower latency, you can get much higher bandwidth out of it, much more data, much lower ping, but you have to be in the same room as the 5 gigahertz router. If you go into the next room, just beyond even a thin wall, your 5 gigahertz connectivity from your Wi-Fi router drops significantly. If you go a couple rooms away from your 5 gigahertz router, you probably lose your signal altogether, and your phone or your tablet or your computer automatically jumps over to the lower frequency range, 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi. 2.4 gigahertz can penetrate walls much easier. It can travel much greater distances than the 5 gigahertz band. So that's what I'm saying. I know it's confusing, but 5G broadband, what they're talking about now with cell phones and everything, 5G broadband operates to almost 4 times higher, 4 to 20 times higher the frequency range. So it's starting at the frequencies nobody wanted and almost nobody uses, 24 gigahertz to up around 100 gigahertz. The higher you go, the harder it is for frequencies to penetrate anything. So you're telling me that we are going to make this broadband network, install it in cities and everything, but when it rains, I can't connect to it. If it gets foggy, I can't connect to it. Certain frequencies can't even penetrate my hand while I'm using the phone. I'm not saying all that to say that 5G is going to be pointless or that it will never work. I'm just saying that those are the major hurdles, just even the physics of it all. There are hurdles in all of this that make the transition to 5G almost impossible. Going to the moon was supposed to be impossible, but we did it, unless you believe the Earth is flat, and then we didn't do it. We went to the moon, by the way. I'm joking, but we went to the moon. So those are the technical hurdles. 24 gigahertz, 100 gigahertz is going to have a hard time penetrating your hand. It's going to have a hard time penetrating fog and rain and weather, let alone getting into your house. When I first saw 5G, this new 5G being touted, it was that, what service? It's Verizon, I think. Verizon 5G, is that it? You can check if it's available in your area. It's like, if it can't get through the rain, how is it going to get through my wall? So those are massive physical hurdles, but I think we will manage to circumvent them somehow. It's going to take changes to our infrastructure, but those are the physical limitations. 2, the second limitation of it all comes down to your actual hardware. Let's use your cell phone, your smartphone, for example. Traditionally, up until this point, right now, currently, I should say that, right now, currently, the way smartphones are set up is it's a SoC, a system on chip, with the RAM layered on top of that chip to save space. That means your operating system, Android operating system, Apple, all that stuff is on the chip. The storage is there. A lot of stuff is just with the system on a chip. It's all contained in one central place, and then the motherboard only exists in as much capacity to make as much room as possible for the battery. So you have the system on chip, you have the motherboard as small as possible to make room for a big battery to power all of it. System on chip, one chip running everything, is very power efficient. Also makes that battery, as much as battery they can pack in there, last as long as possible. But with the introduction of 5G, as it sits right now, it's going to add another chip. The 5G modem is going to be another chip in there. And any time you start taking up space on a motherboard, you're reducing space for the battery. That's been the argument for removing the headphone jack. Razer says that removing the headphone jack on the new Razer Phone 2 gave them 500 milliamp hours more of battery, and that is significant. So adding another chip to support 5G and all the electronics that are needed for 5G, that's going to eat into battery. So my suggestion is wait a year or two before adopting 5G in your smart device. That's it. Audi Central Houston and AudiCentralHouston.com. They've got you covered. Everything from the A3 to the R8. There's an Audi in every budget. You get all the technology, all the sexiness, all the engineering. Audi Central Houston and AudiCentralHouston.com. Tell them that Geek Therapy Radio sent you. Chris Hogan coming up. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. I'm your mental curator, official trademark. I'm not sure I can say that because I haven't actually.
How did you land on that handle?
Mental curator? I don't know. I didn't hear it anywhere. It's just the scope of the Geek Therapy Radio for new listeners just stumbling upon it in your Uber while you're drunk is that Geek Therapy Radio it's not me being an expert on any one sort of topic, even though I know a whole lot about computers and I know a whole lot about DeLoreans and I know a whole lot about different things. I'm not an expert in any one subject. I am your mental curator. You come to the museum of all this geek stuff, and I'm just the guy to show you around. Hey, let's look at this. And maybe I might have an expert on the show in a specific thing. A few episodes ago, I had a molecular biologist. We were talking about why you can't clone dinosaurs, like specifically why you can't clone dinosaurs. Not just because we've all heard that's impossible. You can't do it. Jurassic Park's just a movie. It's like, no. Let's talk about why you can't do it. And because if you talk about why you can't do it, if you talk about why you can't do something, that helps you realize like, what are the things we need to change to make it so that we can do it? Like, what are knowing the obstacles?
So you're trying to clone dinosaurs on this show? Oh yeah, sounds like it.
Side project.
Wow.
We were talking about sponsors off the air. I was like, I'm just taking any of that cheddar, and I'm investing it into getting Raptors for real. Chris Hogan is still my guest. The last segment we were talking about.
Classic games,
PS2.
And I was a Budokai fan. I don't think you were, because you kind of scoffed at me when I said that.
Well, I just hadn't played it very much. It was Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, Dragon Ball Z was it for me.
I think
a 10-year-old Chris Hogan man.
That's what I'm saying. Oof. Dragon Ball Z, I was a little bit older, when by the time I guess it was popular in the United States, it was on Cartoon Network after school.
Right.
And some of my friends were really into it for 5 minutes, but we didn't really play the PlayStation 2 game. I've always just, if we're talking about fighting games, it is no secret.
Well, I didn't even get on the Xbox game until like 360.
Okay.
I always thought people who had Xboxes were weird. Like an
Yeah,
Xbox.
you know
First
what?
off, the original Xbox is so butt ugly.
Oh, the big
The
black,
big clunky, green
janky thing.
Ugh,
But the thing
controller is weird. I don't think I've ever even played an Xbox. I used to have friends because they would play Halo.
oh, let's talk. Oh my gosh,
See,
Chris.
I never played Xbox. I never got into Halo. I was always a Call of Duty guy.
Yeah.
Once I got older and I was into the shooting games and stuff like that, so I was always Call of Duty. When I got to be like in junior high, high school, the only 3 games I would ever buy every year, because they would always drop a new one, was Madden, Call of Duty, and Grand Theft Auto if Grand Theft Auto's dropping a new game.
Yeah. So here's my Xbox came out a little after PS2, around the same.
Yeah.
It was around the same time.
Yeah.
All I remember is at that time I lived in Los Angeles, and I was going to sound school out there. And after school, sometimes we would go to our buddy's house, one of the classmates. A house. No one had a house.
Right, no.
It was a crappy apartment in 2003 that cost probably $33,000 a month.
Sure.
In the crappiest. There's Hollywood. Hollywood's actually not a very good place to live. Like
No.
No one
like
lives.
people
It's
think
a
of
crap.
LA. There are tons of crappy suburbs littered around
You're
LA.
like, oh, I want to live in Hollywood. Oh,
No,
Hollywood
no.
is the most
Like North
depressing,
Hollywood.
dank.
North Hollywood is the perfect example. North Hollywood sounds nice. It's got the word Hollywood in it.
That's where it
Okay.
was.
Yeah, I'm
the
sure it
school
was.
was in North Hollywood,
Yeah.
and the apartment was in North Hollywood. But this is the Xbox thing. Everyone had, not everyone, but like all the roommates. There's like 3 roommates, 3 or 4, and they all had Xboxes. So that we had Ethernet cables running around
Right.
the floor
Right.
because we were playing Halo. LAN party style with the Xboxes, and you mentioned the Xbox 360. The original 360s did not have Wi-Fi. Did you know that?
Are you serious?
The PS3
In
had Wi-Fi.
2007?
Yeah. Nintendo obviously didn't have Wi-Fi. Nintendo
Right.
had no, well, effectively
but
no
360,
way.
how would you play online?
Ethernet. It still had an Ethernet
Oh, yeah,
jack.
you
It just
did
didn't have
that Ethernet.
It just didn't have the Wi-Fi.
That's so weird.
Initially, I got like this. I think I have a booger in my nose, but
No,
it's just
you're
a
good,
long
man.
nose hair.
Oh,
I'm getting
that's
old,
always
Chris.
the best, man.
Guess this gray hair just growing
I
right
get
out of my
them
nostrils.
sometimes. I'm half Italian though, so I'm a hairy individual. Anyways, we're off the rails here.
Chris is a how should I put this?
Mulatto?
I wasn't.
Where you going there?
I don't know what I can say. I don't know what I can say.
What do you want to say?
Yeah, I had another friend named Chris who was mixed race. I'll just say PC.
Half black, half white.
Half black, half white. But Chris is Italian. Is your mom
My
black
mom,
or your mom?
my mom, who is white, is Italian.
Okay, so I'd say that like he's a very handsome gentleman.
appreciate it.
That's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
Is very very handsome.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this for a second. Can we get real on Geek Therapy
Let's do
Radio
it.
a little bit?
What do
Let's
you
do
got?
it. We didn't plan on this. I had another friend that I grew up with named Chris.
Yeah.
I won't say his last name, but right now he's a baller. He's probably a millionaire.
Okay.
But growing up, we grew up in Kingwood, and people of mixed race, I don't have to tell you, you probably don't have the easiest time as far as bullying and stuff goes. I don't know what your
My
particular past
situation,
was.
it's funny you bring this up because I was thinking about this yesterday.
But that's what we want to talk about.
In regards to race and stuff like that? Like,
Yeah, and in regards to being mixed race, because there was a story recently in the news about some little black girl who was being picked on by other black kids in her class because she had some friends who were white, and they were the black kids were giving her a hard time, and then it was
I will say
stuff about mixed race.
I heard like little girls who were also mixed race. They had something. They had issue. Like you don't. It's kind of weird. When you're in junior high and high school, mainly junior high, you don't really know who to hang out with. Should I sit with at lunch? Should I sit with all the black kids, or should I sit with all the white kids? And
that's what I'm wondering.
and
like,
it's so weird. I can't really describe it to you because you just see me, and as you look at me, you see a black dude probably, right? But I feel.
I wouldn't know. I would think you're probably Hispanic. Maybe,
Yeah.
Because of the
But
Italian.
you don't see white though. Is what I'm saying.
Not right. No.
Like
yeah.
you don't see. Oh, there's a white guy.
Right.
But I feel like a white guy just as much as I feel like a black guy because I'm equal. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Like, it's like, who do I hang out with? Should I hang out with the black kids? Should I hang out with the white kids? Soon you grow up and you realize, oh, just hang out with people.
Just people.
Just people, right.
That's the thing.
That's another thing. Should I act white? Should I act black? Because that definitely is a thing in, junior high or whatever.
Yeah.
You just realize I'm just going to act more like myself.
But you know what? There's white kids
but
acting
then, like,
black,
picked on, you mentioned,
quote unquote black. In,
right. Oh, yeah.
In,
yeah.
Like
the white kids who wear do-rags. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What do you... all I'm saying is middle school, early high school, that's a very weird transitional time for, like, everybody.
Right.
So I can't call it sympathy because I didn't grow up like that. Because if you grew up with one race, like, you know...
It is weird.
Even though...
Especially, like, when I talk to somebody else who's mixed race, because mixed race people are kind of rare. You know?
You
don't see a whole lot of them. So when you talk to one of them, you're like, oh, so what was it like for you?
Because,
what was
you know
it like
why?
for me, though? I never felt like I got picked on or bullied. I always felt like I was accepted everywhere because I was mixed race.
Good.
Maybe that's just my mindset. I never felt like I was a victim of racism.
Good.
Ever.
Because that's what I saw with my other friend Chris too. And again, I can't speak for him because I wasn't around you 24/7. I wasn't around my other friend Chris 24/7. So I don't know what he experienced outside. What the heck was that? Throwing pennies?
Somebody's throwing something.
Just that I know that it is a big issue. There are lots of as far as bullying goes. They're like saying, you think you had it bad as a white kid. You think you had it bad as a black kid. Just imagine being mixed in some people...
Where you're caught in the middle.
But where you don't even know who yourself is.
Yeah. You
guess.
go through, like, not an identity crisis, but, like, trying to figure out, like I said, who to hang out with. And because I remember it vividly in junior high, man, all the black kids, they sat at one table, the one long table in junior high in 7th grade. And I was like, well, should I sit with them or should I go sit with these guys who were rocking Hollister and Abercrombie?
Man.
But
then you just realize you're you, and you're just going to hang out with whoever your friends are.
And I was
whoever.
like that. 7th grade,
Cool,
I was sagging my pants and all that. And then 8th grade hit, I was rocking Hollister. That's, I mean, what are you going to do?
What is it? Oh, man, I can't say it for you because you weren't the 90s. I think the new trend, like today, as of recording, is called the blunder years. And everyone's posting pictures of themselves in the 90s.
I've never even
with
heard
all their
this term.
stupid, like, bowl cuts and, like, dressing all crazy. The blunder years.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Anyways, are we out of time?
We're out of time.
Damn it, Johnny. It was good to see you.
Unless you want to stick around for the first... We didn't do the first segment yet.
We can do it, man.
You want to do it?
Can we do it now?
Because we're on a good subject here.
Yeah,
let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it now. We'll be right back with more Geek Therapy Radio. Real quick on the way out, 30 seconds, Audi Central Houston. Less than 30 seconds, actually. AudiCentralHouston.com. And Audi in every budget. It's still before Christmas time, technically, so if you want to be that baller, literally putting that the bow on the Audi. If you want to do that, please get me one too. If you're just throwing Audis around, I'll take one. But start your search at AudiCentralHouston.com and Audi Central Houston. When you go, tell them Geek Therapy Radio sent ya. Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio. I am your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger. We're going to talk about some really cool geeky stuff, as we are wont to do on Geek Therapy Radio. We're going to talk about Elon Musk's tunnels. We'll save that for another segment. It baffles my mind a little bit. Maybe we'll get into this segment. I don't know. But here in the studio today, I have a ghost of I Heart Houston past, Chris Hogan.
Hello.
Welcome a sight. You remember what's that story? The Christmas story, Christmas Carol?
Sure.
The three ghosts that Christmas past, present, future.
Future. What am I? The ghost of I Heart Past?
Ghost of I Heart Past.
There you go.
Chris Hogan. What have you been up to? When did you leave, actually? And where did you go?
All right. So, little backstory. Last year in May, I went to New York City just for vacation, just checking out the city for the first time. I'd never been. Fell in love with the city. I don't know if you've ever been, Mr. Hamburger.
I bumped in the mic.
Don't kill yourself.
I have been to New York City a few times.
So, certain
Top
people
of the World Trade Center.
Certain people I talk to, they go to New York and they catch a bug, and they're like, I got to be here. I don't know why, but I just got to be here. And that's kind of how I got my first time going there. So I said, you know what? I'm going to come back home and I'm going to save my money and I'm going to sell my car and I'm going to quit my job eventually and I'm going to move to New York. Within 7 months, I was on a plane to start a new life in New York City.
I was telling Callum, right? I just want to say Cal. Callum's in here. He's kind of a training for to be a grinder board op, like me and Chris were. Before you went, I remember we were having some heart-to-hearts. You're like, man, Johnny, what should I do? Not that I would give you
It was a weird time because I decided I was moving to New York. I had made my mind up. And as you know, I was a board op for, what, like 4 years?
I think you were having me try to convince you or something like that. Like convince me I'm making the right decision.
I just remember right before I left, I get an opportunity to go on the air on KTRH and on the weekends and talk about the news and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You remember this?
Yeah,
for 3 months, I was in the newsroom. I had
You're
stopped
getting a
being a board
promotion.
op, and I'd gotten a promotion to be in the newsroom, and that was something that had never happened, to let a 20-something-year-old kid talk, on the radio, on KTRH, 50,000 watt station.
Yeah.
And I was like, do I stay in Houston and follow this out, or do I go to New York and do what I want to do? And I was really like, man, what do I do? So I was probably asking you about that. I was asking everybody about that.
The only thing I told you was like, man, if I was you, I would do it.
Yep.
Because
that's what
you're
everybody told
young.
me.
I was like, man,
That's
you're
what
not
everybody-
tied down.
That's what everybody, well,
Do it,
almost
do it.
everybody said.
Okay.
And that's an excellent point. I was 23 years old. I didn't have a girlfriend, didn't have a wife or kids or anything like that. I had a job that I loved. I freaking loved. I loved working at iHeart.
Yeah.
It's the first job I had right out of high school.
That's
yeah,
that's why I said
it's
you're
nuts,
young. Like,
right?
go to New York, man.
Yeah,
Do your
yeah.
thing. Like, you're not gonna. This opportunity, you can't exactly do this. Take that risk when you're like 40.
No. Especially when you have kids and wife and all that stuff. So I said, yeah, I'll do it. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Lucky
Okay.
for me, it kind of worked out.
So what are you doing in New York?
I am currently working at Sirius XM.
Yeah.
Working on their conservative channel on the Patriot. I don't know if that's competing. Radio,
Well, whatever.
who cares?
We're not endorsing them.
No,
just,
obviously.
It's just
I'm
what you're
kidding.
doing.
So, just producing one of their nightly shows. I'm loving it.
So you were telling me briefly before we went on the air here, and secrets. Now, this is pre-recorded.
Sure.
Geek Therapy Radio is pre-recorded. People know that. Right now, it's Thursday afternoon to 11 p.m.
Right.
Anyways, right now, behind the curtain. So you were saying since you worked on Sirius FM, which is satellite radio, that every time an F-bomb goes off.
I was in terrestrial radio for 4 years, so it's just an instinct to reach for that dump button. Instinct. And I still to this day, and I've been working there for almost a year. And
is there anything, this is actually a good question, is there anything that you can't say? Like, can you go on a hate speech tirade and it just be like...
You know what? Sirius runs on a delay. We just never hit the delay because we don't have a need to. If somebody drops an F-bomb, we're not hitting the delay. But if somebody were to come on and say, hey, we're going to kill the president or something like that, then we'll probably hit the delay on that. The only thing they don't want you talking about, which Stern will get in trouble with sometimes, is they don't want you talking about like in-depth body fluids, let's say.
Yeah.
So like anything like super gross and nasty, obviously they don't want going out over the airwaves, which makes sense.
But
Sometimes some hosts get away with certain topics.
And Howard Stern is the reason why we have delay buttons and dump buttons.
Well,
and
you know what? It's funny you say that. I was talking to my friend about this last night. Howard Stern is one reason, another big reason why we're so serious about the delay button in the FCC.
Yeah.
Is Janet Jackson.
Oh yeah.
Yes, indeed. Janet Jackson. The FCC came down hard after that. 2004, baby, Super Bowl.
Cal.
In Houston.
He's exposing his nipple. You can't see it on the air, but he's doing it. I remember. Yeah. Is that 2005?
2004. The Super Bowl was in Houston.
I know it was in Houston, but yeah.
Yes.
You know what the funny thing about that is? If I may,
if you can't even see it, like it was covered up, right?
Yeah, there's like a daily, there's like a pasty or doily or something over there, but it's like it wasn't. But
listen, that was before YouTube, and that was a very big deal. It was a very big deal. And if you can read about it today, man, like a lot of the FCC rules and regulations stem from that. But Stern, you're right. When it comes to talk radio, is a lot of the reason why we have these dump buttons in every studio, why every station is on a 10-second delay.
Yeah, back to YouTube for a little bit, little sidetrack here.
This is a tech show.
This is a tech show, and this falls right under the umbrella.
Yeah.
You go on YouTube now, and you can see. I'm just looking at the time. We're good. You can see this video is 10 years old, 11 years old. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. YouTube still seems like a new thing. Last night.
I remember the very first video I watched on YouTube vividly. I don't know why, but it always stuck with me. It feels like it's been around forever.
So when was the?
I think it was like
what grade were you in?
I was like in 5th or 6th grade.
Yeah,
I know. Isn't it weird? It was like 2005, 2006. I'm a young dude. I'm 24 years old.
I saw some guy on YouTube. There's a Ferrari back there, actually, the red Ferrari. You probably see those all the time in New York City.
In the city,
Oh yeah,
got high rollers.
Yeah, you didn't just say the F-bomb right there, did you?
being in the city, obviously, you got high rollers.
Okay, I
That's what
thought you said like, oh, whatever.
You know what's funny though? You say that, and we're talking about the F-bomb. So
I got to be testy about it.
Michael
What do you say?
Connor.
Yeah.
He, Michael Connor, who
Yes.
does a show on 790. He used to do a show on the weekends, which I used to produce. And when he was done doing the show on the weekends, he was moving to the weekdays. He called me up because I used to be his old producer, and he's like, "Hey, we're gonna talk to Chris Hogan, who's our old producer." And I forget, I'm on terrestrial radio. I drop an F-bomb on the radio on the phone, and I just completely forgot. They had to dump it.
Put you on hold and say, "Wait, all right, listeners, I'm sorry, that sounded crazy."
It happens.
The thing I was gonna say about YouTube and youth and everything was. I was watching a thing about the Nintendo Wii, which I'm going to talk about the Wii on the show if I haven't already, depending what segment this
I gotta
is.
ask you yeah.
Oh, you can ask me on the show. It's perfect.
Okay.
Anyways, some guy commented, "Man, the Wii came out when I was a senior in high school. I feel old." I was like, "Oh man."
I never got into the Wii.
PS2 came out when I was a senior in high school.
PS2 was it, man.
It was it. I remember seeing,
and that's what I wanted to ask you about because they're doing the new PlayStation, or not the new PlayStation, but they're releasing the old PlayStation, or they already have. You know what I'm talking about?
The PS Classic,
the
PlayStation
PS
Classic, yeah.
Yeah, with all like 15 games or whatever downloaded onto it.
Yeah.
Are you looking forward to that? Is that your alley? Is that your bag, as the kids say?
Well, see, I have no interest in buying it.
Okay.
I have no problem with its existence. It is a very critically divided device. People, the jury is out, and I would say for the most part, people don't like it. They got some
on
of
this new version.
Yeah,
because remember they did the same thing with the Sega Genesis a few years ago, and it just wasn't the same.
These classic consoles have been out for a while. What put them on the radar as far as like, wow, a major company's doing this, was when Nintendo put out the NES Classic, and no one could get the NES Classic, and they were in short supply and all the demand. So then, of course, you had Nintendo did it again with the Super NES Classic and all that stuff. So with the PlayStation Classic, it was the detail on the actual device. Like for a collector, I would say a collector absolutely get it. It's like a mini PS, and they got, even when you flip it upside down, like the metal grill on the bottom. There's no vents in this thing, but they still put some like metal behind it to make it look
like
it's like it's a nice replica. But apparently the emulation, because all it is emulators in there. It's not really Sony hardware inside there. It's just Chinese whatever. So some of the emulation, we're getting geeky here.
Yeah, we are, man. I'm an eclectic dude, Johnny Hamburger.
The reason why the jury's kind of out on it is that they're using the European versions for some of these games, which European versions, their TVs operate at 50 hertz as opposed to the 60 hertz that American NTSC in Japan. So the emulation's a little slower. They're playing whatever game like this. This is like 10% or a little percent.
It's not what I remember from 1999.
It's not perfectly replicating what I was used to.
What was your game on the PlayStation? Were you a PlayStation kid?
Gran Turismo.
Okay.
I loved Gran Turismo.
I was a Crash Bandicoot.
See, that's the other thing. Crash Bandicoot isn't on.
Yeah, I know, and that's
the PS
like,
Classic.
I would totally get it. I would get it today if Crash Bandicoot was on, but it's not. I think Tomb Raider might be.
Is Tomb Raider?
I don't know. Maybe not.
I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, it doesn't matter because Crash Bandicoot's not on, so I'm not getting
Bandicoot's not on it. Yeah, Bandicoot was...
But man,
that's one of the baffling things. Just another Ferrari.
If I were to go to GameStop right now and I could get a PlayStation 2, I would get it in a heartbeat. I don't think you can.
I still have PS2.
Do you?
PS2
was your game
still
on PS2?
great.
Dragon Ball Z Budokai, right? Yes. Yes.
What was my game on PS2?
I love
Burnout.
Nice.
Oh gosh. God of War.
Okay.
God of War 1 and 2,
good.
like on PS, they still hold up today. A lot of PS2 games still hold up today.
Are you on Red Dead? Let's talk current, just really quick.
Can you stick around for another segment? Let's do it.
Okay. All
right, let's go to commercial break real quick on the way out here for Audi Central Houston and AudiCentralHouston.com. It's still 'tis the season. They said I'm going to do a best of this week. No, it's a new show. Go to AudiCentralHouston.com. They've got an Audi in every budget from the A3 to the R8. Get your Audi on at Audi Central Houston and tell them Geek Therapy Radio sent you. WorthTheWait.co. Nutrition advice that actually helps. WorthTheWait.co. WEIGHT. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. I wasn't planning on having Chris on the entire show, but
so damn interesting. I get it.
But so damn interesting. I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger, with my guests are called the mental contributors. So Chris and I were talking earlier about growing up. I'm not mixed race. Chris is mixed race, and he said if you were to look at him, you probably. I said I would maybe.
Well, my point was, you look at me, you don't see a white person.
Right. And the kind of issues that could bring up growing up, especially in this culture of bullying and all that kind of stuff.
I wasn't bullied.
So let's get on that subject. Like,
go ahead.
Okay, I was bullied a bit because I had big, thick glasses growing up. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that I was bullied a whole lot because maybe I was. Maybe I just tuned it out. But the way I dealt with it was it would just come to a head and then we'd have a scrap. And after we had a scrap, fist flying, stuff like that, schoolyard, that was it.
Boys,
and they were friends.
Yeah.
I just wanted them to be my friends.
Right.
Like, and I wouldn't seek them out. Hey, please just be my friend. But I would give them warning after warning of messing with me. Mm-hmm. In my heart, I just wanted them to be my friends. Like, and I want to fight with you. I want you to be my
your buddy.
My enemy. I just want us to be buddies. Mm-hmm. So, and sometimes, usually, that took bloody noses and a few knees to the crotch to get the point across. I wouldn't throw out the knee. They'd knee me, and then I was going to say whatever, just fights.
Dirty
fights.
Yeah.
So that's how I handled my bullies, was not starting the fight, not instigating the fight, but giving plenty of warning. Like, hey, if you don't stop picking on me, I've got no problem throwing down. So we would throw down, and that would be the end of it, because kids learned through corporal punishment, and it wasn't even punishment. It was just kind of, here's the consequence of your actions, is now you're going to go to your mom crying because you didn't actually expect the kid you're bullying to fight back. And there was nothing deadly. It was nothing ongoing. It was just a couple smacks around, and then
that was it.
There's resistance here.
Sure, I think everybody goes through that, and I don't think I'm any special. I don't think I'm special at all just because of the color of my skin. Mm-hmm. Every boy goes through a little bullying or a little misunderstanding on the tetherball court, and And you get a little fight, you scuff your knee a little bit, and you pick yourself up, and you dust yourself off, and you go about your day.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So that's my. But I honestly never felt like I was picked on because of my race. Never felt like a victim or anything like that. Yeah. I think that kind of mentality is crippling. I think that kind of, once you start, everybody's picking on me. Once you decide the world is against you, then you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, I can totally see that. That's kind of been...
There are people who are professional victims. They're just run around, claiming racism or this and that, and they're just constantly being picked on. And
I want to be careful here. We're not saying that racism doesn't exist.
No, of course not. Of course it exists.
Just that some people, and it doesn't even matter what color that you are, that it's like the default state of... I'm a victim. I'm owed things, and then if you can't speak for all people, we have to be careful. You can't speak for all people.
I'm speaking for myself. But if someone, you're speaking for yourself.
But if someone's default position is that the world is against me and everything is going wrong for me because the world is just against me,
nobody's for you.
At some point, you have to kind of think. Just take a step back and think. Is the world against me, or do I just make crappy decisions over and over and over again?
Right.
So, and again, there are some people that are just crushed under the foot of the machine, and they can't get out as much as they try. But then there's other people who grow up with everything not handed to them, but just with every opportunity in the world, especially in this country, who, maybe your circumstances aren't because the man or whatever mystery figure is out to get you. Maybe it's because you didn't make such great choices.
Right.
And again, I'm being very careful.
You
can't speak for everybody. Geek Therapy Radio is not meant to get political or divisive like that.
No.
But you can argue that there is at least a percentage of people who are professional victims.
Of course.
Who, if they just reflect on their life, say, maybe not. Maybe shooting a heroin wasn't the best.
I agree.
Idea at that party.
I agree wholeheartedly with you, Mr. Hamburger.
So
very well said.
So we'll get onto this in our last few minutes here. In Geek Therapy Radio, my big thing is my modus operandi, my mission is that we're all geeks about something. No matter what walk of life you're from, you have this passion, you have these hobbies that sustain
when I was
you.
In junior high, this kid, he was into collecting shoes. He loved Jordans and Nikes, and when anybody asked him, he'd say, I'm a shoe geek.
Shoe geek.
Yeah, he's a shoe geek.
That was his thing.
He's a geek about shoes.
He likes shoes.
He likes shoes.
And that's important because life is hard sometimes. Life is hard a lot of the times. And I remember when I think I've only been really depressed once in my life for a couple years after I broke up with an ex-girlfriend. That saddest story ever.
Right.
But everyone's had that same thing.
Been there.
So, but if I didn't have my hobbies and my geek things, which was music, which was Street Fighter 2, some video games, and mostly it was kind of expressing myself through music and things like that.
Sure.
But if I never had, I think I went to the art store and got some easels and things. The point is that self-expression,
Right?
And I think
kind of
an outlet. And I think a lot of people are scared, maybe through upbringing or whatever, to be scared of having any sort of artistic expression. So my dad was, I don't want to say my dad was harsh, but he was very realistic. He would always say the realities of the world, and here's the reality. You need to do something to put food on the table, provide for family. But he never squashed the music. He always saw that as something important to hold on to, and that was always a common bond between me and my dad. So I think a lot of people, you're kind of, they're setting themselves up for failure. Their parents might be setting themselves up for failure by trying to squash any sort of artistic outlet.
Agreed.
So could you imagine maybe a mixed race kid, since that's what we're talking about, growing up and both parents are harsh and they're just trying to beat creativity out of them, and then this mixed race kid goes to school and he's in a situation where he's just bullied constantly by both, in all races of people. He just doesn't fit in anywhere. He doesn't fit in, and he has nowhere to go from that. He has no sort of expression from that, because his parents say, don't mess around with that art stuff. That's
Right.
going to get you nowhere.
Right.
Well, now you just got someone going into society who's beaten to death, almost through no fault of their own,
Right.
that have no outlet. What are they going to turn to in that situation?
They're going to turn to bad
Turn to
things.
bad things.
Turn to things that are not going to be good for them for the future.
Right.
And that's a sad reality. I'm surprised you think about that, because I rarely think about that. That is a sad, especially to kids who are into something like, for instance, I'm into radio. And when I graduated high school, I was a geek about radio. I studied radio. I studied different hosts. And I can't imagine my parents saying, nothing's going to come from that. Don't, go learn a trade or something like that. You're not making any money, because we really didn't make any money for the longest time.
Right.
But, yeah. But,
So,
yeah.
So this is an edit point. There's a whole 15 minutes in between what you just heard and what you're hearing now, where we basically deduced that if you grew up just traumatized and bullied and terrible circumstances, and you had parents or guardians or whoever in your life squashing any sort of creative outlet, any sort of geek thing that you were into, that, what did you say? You said they become serial killers? Yeah, a lot of
pretty
people
much.
become serial
Pretty
killers.
much.
Speaking of serial killers, Alex has joined us. Alex is Chris's handler today.
My chauffeur.
You should go back by the microphone. He's sitting on a giant blue ball. I'm not sure what that signifies.
I'm working on my core, excuse you.
Okay, so I'm the one who needs to work on my core. By the way, Chris and I are dressed the same. He came from New York, and he's like, I guess I'm a trendsetter in New York. I don't even understand it. So Alex has a podcast called Pass the Gravy.
Yeah.
And he
I
is.
had to think about that for a second, Johnny.
There's a lot of people around here with a lot of shows. I didn't want to get it.
Podcast.
Exactly.
Okay.
We're a radio company. I was thinking it was, but no, it's not What's on Tap. It's Pass the Gravy. But what episode are you on now? Like 575,000?
We just did 263 last
Into the
night.
microphone,
Yeah.
buddy.
Am I in the microphone? Or not?
I'll catch it. I'll
Okay.
compress it. You can get it. Yeah. Where can people find that?
iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, pretty much anywhere that you listen to podcasts at all. Like if you're listening to Geek Therapy on a podcast, go just download it now.
Yep.
So,
Pass the
home
Gravy.
Yeah.
This is home week.
Yeah. Ho ho ho. And other females.
See? That's Bob I was talking about. Bob sees the closed door and the microphone's out. He'll still walk in here and
He loves it.
interject. That's what Bob is all about. So Pass the Gravy podcast, iTunes, iHeartRadio.
Yeah, episodes every Wednesday night we put them out.
Okay, just
Thursdays, really.
just settle down now. This is Geek Therapy Radio.
All right, well, okay.
Just kidding. I'll put a link to it in the description of the
I
show.
appreciate that, man.
This is obviously all going on the podcast. This is not going to air this last seconds. Actually, I'm going to butt it. I'm going to butt it together. I can let podcast listeners behind the curtain to know how I'm editing this together. On the broadcast, you're probably not going to hear much of this because I'm going to have to fit it into the thing. And I'm going to start that by saying, Chris had something nice. You were going to tell me something nice. You built it all up.
Yeah, man.
You built
During
it
the
up like
break,
you were
I
about
built
crying
it up,
over there.
And so when I first started here at iHeart, you were one of the first dudes I trained with, and you were doing the overnight shift, and it was just me and you
Yep.
hanging out overnight.
Yep.
And there's only so much radio you can teach somebody, and at a certain point you get to talking about certain things you like. You're a geek. You talk about things you geek out on.
Yeah.
One of the things you turned me on to, like the first day I met you, freaking It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
You told me to go home and binge watch every single episode, and it changed my life. One of my favorite shows of all time. And every time I watch it, I'm like, thank God for Johnny Hamburger. He turned me on to it.
Okay, so
It's so great. Did you watch this last season?
yeah.
Fantastic.
Listeners, he built this up off the air to be like this big emotional thing, and it's about Sonny, which I'll tell you, it's kind of better than a heartfelt thing.
What were you expecting?
Sonny is amazing. What did you think of? I follow Rob McElhenney on social media, and before the last episode aired, which was his dance, he's like, I'm not sure how people are going to respond to this.
That.
A lot of people aren't really going to like it.
I didn't know what to
I did this
expect.
like for me, not for anyone else. Like this is just kind of.
I thought it was first
let it
off,
be.
I wasn't expecting that because It's Always
No.
Sunny is such a dark show that you don't
Right.
expect anything real and emotional and raw like that, and that
Right.
was so out of the norm for them.
But that's why
But
it was so
really
good. I thought
good. It was
Yeah.
really good, and I listened to a podcast of one of the writers on that show. I don't know how much time you got, Johnny.
We're fine. We're good.
We're post show now, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know if your listeners probably never saw the episode, but you probably care to hear about this. When they shot that scene, nobody knew what they were seeing. They didn't know that he was going to do that amazing dance routine. So like the prisoners who were reacting the way they are, who were just amazed and shocked. That's their real reaction. I thought that was really cool. But I thought the whole
didn't know
season
that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that are they real prisoners or they're
No,
extras?
they're just extras.
But they didn't know what they were about to.
They didn't know what they were about to see. They just showed the dance routine on a screen. And they obviously had Danny DeVito in the front.
Yeah.
But their reaction was very real, and you go back and watch it now. It's weird. You just notice their reaction. It's kind of funny.
I like when shows do that. South Park does that sometimes. There are some shows that are comedies or they're really freaking dark and horrible, like Sunny, which is hilarious. I love Sunny Philadelphia for all of those reasons.
Oh God, it's
and
so great.
What happens is shows like that where you don't expect these very poignant emotional things, it makes it so that when they do these really emotional things, like the impact is 1,000 times harder, and they usually do it 1,000 times better than a drama does it.
Yeah, I agree. So I know I just got finished ranting and raving about how great that finale was with the dance and everything. Part of me was just a little disappointed that they did it because It's Always Sunny is like Seinfeld, right?
Yeah.
They're horrible, deplorable people, and it's just their lives. Seinfeld, I love the fact that they never did anything emotional. Their rule was no hugging, no learning, and they never did anything emotional. And I wish Sunny had stuck to that. We're never going to do anything emotional. It's always just going to be pure comedy. But it's at the same
I
time,
think they've jumped the shark.
Yeah.
And I think they know that.
Yeah. You think so?
I think they know. All of those actors on there are doing other stuff.
Yeah.
And I think they know that there's some shows. Simpsons should have died a long time ago. Simpsons should have been over. There's that saying that you either you die a hero or live long
enough to see yourself become the villain.
The villain.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying Sonny's there.
No,
but they are aware of that, and they want to stop probably pretty soon here.
I think they're stopping next season, or maybe they want to get to 15 seasons just so they can break the record.
I wouldn't have a problem with that.
But I still think it's the funniest show on TV right now. It's the most well-written show. The episode about the bathroom and, oh my God.
There's
the jokes in there are golden.
There's so much there that you can just have it binge watching. And what's up, Bob?
Are you still in New York?
I am, yeah, Bobby.
Oh my God, Mr. Gotham.
Who would have thought? Mr. Gotham? Did you just hear us talking about Batman?
No, I didn't hear you talk about anything.
Okay. What's going on, Bobby? You look good, man.
I gotta do the Rockets.
Oh boy.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you, buddy.
He'll be out in a minute.
I'll be out.
Yeah, but there's so much content. That's twice.
That's twice.
I'm leaving it in here.
You're having a conversation.
I always talk about Bob on my show. Like, I'm sorry I had to edit for a Bob, make
Are
a
you
Bob
leaving that
edit.
in?
I'm leaving it in for
Good.
the podcast. People need to know. Yeah, exactly. We love Bob. I don't mean it as a mean
Bob's
thing.
the
We
greatest.
freaking love Bob. We'll just wrap it up with this. There's so much Sunny in Philadelphia. Even if they ended at 15 seasons, there's so much quality writing that the more you watch the shows, it's like the more you see, the more you notice, and it's brilliant.
It's one of the few shows that I can just watch. It never gets old. I've been watching those episodes since you turned me onto it, and I can always go back to them.
Better than The Office?
Absolutely, 110.
What?
It is.
Alex is like.
It is.
Okay.
It is
gets
so
chubs
much
for The
funnier than The
Office.
Office. It's so much smarter than The Office.
It is.
I say
I love The Office also.
Oh, I love The Office
is way
also.
more relatable though.
Yes, to the mainstream. That's why it did so well. It's could be everyone can relate
It's
to
Always
The
Sunny will never win an award.
You can't relate to Sonny.
You can't.
You can't relate to that level of narcissism. That's why it's
people.
hilarious.
Yeah, no, it's my favorite show. I think.
Who's your
like,
favorite character on the way out? Who's your favorite character?
God almighty. I mean, like Dennis. Dennis
Yes.
has got to be because he's such a psychopath.
He's a
He's an
psychopath.
actual psychopath.
That worries my fiance. She's like, "Why
Oh,
is
yeah.
Dennis your favorite?"
Dennis
It's
is
like,
a psychopath. Like
because he always
an
gets his
easy answer
comeuppance.
of who's your favorite character is like Charlie.
Yeah.
You know, Charlie's always funny. But Dennis, man, is quietly the funniest dude.
And do you know why he's my favorite?
Why is that?
It's not just because he's the psychopath and that's hilarious in itself
knows
because he
he's a
plays it so perfect.
Yeah.
It's because it never works out for him.
No.
He always gets his comeuppance. Everyone gets their comeuppance,
Right.
but Dennis, like he's the one who prides himself on being the smartest and the most golden god,
Right.
just the untouchable. But he never gets away with things. His
Nah.
life is never any better for his antics,
course.
and that's why he's my favorite. It's not
He
because
always
he's a
talks about
psychopath.
how he and Dee are so much better than everybody else, but in reality, they also went on welfare. They
Yeah.
were also addicted to crack.
They're also exactly.
You know, so-
life, for as much as he thinks he has a control on life,
Yeah.
life always beats him
get it.
to a pulp for his antics.
Yep.
And that's why Dennis is one of my favorite characters. You can't keep pulling stuff like this over on people and expecting to get away with it. Eventually life gets you, and life always gets always gets Dennis. And that's why he's my favorite, because he's so delusional.
Yep.
But life beats him with a hammer every time.
Like him
that's
'cause
why
he's
I
a
like him.
psychopath. I just like him.
And he goes psycho and his eyes get all puffy.
Oh yeah,
He gets all
And
sloppy.
he starts screaming, and the vein starts popping out. He's in that.
Dennis losing control is the best.
Yes.
Is the best
Yep.
on Sunny in Philadelphia.
Agreed.
Because he's so composed. And
but they're all super funny. Even
Right.
even the little characters. Artemis is super funny.
Artemis?
Rickety Cricket, super funny.
He was a priest.
Oh, I know. And
He
if
was a
you
priest
should
at the
watch.
beginning.
You should do what I do. I'll watch every episode with Rickety Cricket and chronicle. Okay, he's a priest here. Now he's just homeless, but now he's got this giant gash going across his face. Like this dude's life just downfalls the more he's associated
He's
with
burned
these people.
alive, and he's just leaned into it.
Oh, burned alive. Oh,
I cannot, in good
great.
conscience, recommend everyone to go watch that show.
Yeah,
if you
it's-
can stomach it.
If you can
sure.
stomach it, if you can get past it, you have to. They can get away with a lot more than other shows do, for the simple reason that they just don't care and they refuse to apologize.
Right. They say they're surprised they're still on the air
Oh
because
my God,
like,
I can't believe they're still on the
they
air
say
with
we
the
just
stuff
did
they're
it and we
doing.
put it on there and we expect to get canceled.
The episode
Like, they
they
never
did last
canceled
season,
us.
Hero or Hate Crime, was one of the funniest episodes of television I'd ever seen. One of the most well-written, smartest comedies I'd ever seen.
Yeah, we
But
could
anyway,
talk about Sunny
can't-
forever.
I can't take up all your time, my man. So I just want to say, every time I watch It's Always Sunny, the very first day I met you, man, you said, go home. It's on Netflix. Binge watch it. And I thank God you told me to do it.
Awesome. Chris Hogan, do you got anything you want to plug? You working on anything?
No, not really. Go listen to Past the Gravy. Go listen to Alex's podcast.
Yeah.
I was on that podcast last night. So check that out.
Okay, and I'll put a link to it. I'll get it from Alex, and
Yeah.
I'll put a link below. Chris, thank you so much
Absolutely. Thanks for
being
having
on
me,
Geek
my
Day for
man.
Radio. Good to see you.
Yep.
Safe travels back to Gotham.
And have a Merry Christmas.
Yeah, thank you very much. Merry Christmas. Yeah, thank you very much. Merry
Thank you, bud.
Christmas.